Hi, how you doing? I'm Jason, and welcome to Eliminating Chronic Musculoskeletal Pain. And without further ado, let's go into our presentation here. So, who are you? Well, you're a person dealing with chronic pain, stiffness, or movement restriction. And that chronic pain, stiffness, or movement restriction, it could be debilitating to where, you can't even get up off the floor. You really have trouble, even walking or doing basic tasks of daily living, that sort of thing. Or it could be annoying but persistent. And this is where you find that you're having trouble doing, some little things. Maybe, you can't quite get down in the cupboard below your knees, or, you have trouble getting up in the morning and not feeling like you have some pain in your hips or your backs or your shoulders. You have trouble reaching overhead, those sorts of things. No matter what, it definitely gets in the way of moving through life in the fluid way in which the human body was meant to. So you also might be an athlete or an active person trying to recover from an old injury and or stay active, or you might be a proactive athlete, meaning that, you've been injured in the past, but, you're looking to have the optimal mechanics in order to stay injury resilient and injury free so that you can keep on doing your activities or sports. You could be what we call the dormant athlete, which is, an office worker who has stiffness, difficulty moving, back pain, shoulder pain, knee pain, lack of energy, and, you just want to get back into the game. You could be an older individual that is just really cognizant of the risk of falls and injuries that happen that are associated with that lack of movement. And you want to be able to stay active. You want to be able to play with the kids, walk the dog, do the gardening, all that kind of stuff. But, you don't want this pain and lack of mobility to get in your way. So the message of this presentation is that you can have a positive effect on this with the right strategy. It is not out of your hands. You're not just getting old. You're not just anything. All these things are able to be affected, at least by you. And so you just need the strategy in order to do that. So I'm here to take you on a transformational journey, understanding the major physical contributions to this issue and this problem. So you want to understand the problem, and then we want to understand the five major areas of focus for the solution to the problem. The caveats to that, well, the solution does require focus. It does require the creation of a physical awareness. It requires you to practice certain techniques in order to both identify the problems within you and to apply the solution. But it doesn't take a lot of time. It doesn't take a whole lot of time. You're not doing an hour workout necessarily every single day in order to affect the problem. By following this plan, you will enhance that awareness. And so, you don't need the awareness prior to affecting the plan. You get the awareness by affecting the plan. These results are compounding over time, like any type of training, but every day is a little bit of a miracle. Sometimes it's big, sometimes small. We get little progresses day by day. This is a little bit different than some of the other things that we do. If we're trying to do strength training, we kind of feel like the next day we're a little bit sore, we're a little bit weaker, where, in this, we tend to only go up as we go along. You might get some soreness and stuff like that, but less so than the cardio and the strength training and those other domains of, activity. Musculoskeletal pain. So let's go over the intricacies of a musculoskeletal pain. So the way it works from, kind of a macro perspective, from that 30,000 foot view, what we get is we have these three types of stress. First, you get the stress of the physical stress, and then that leads to pain or stiffness, and then that leads to lack of movement. And the physical stress, it has three types, basically these negative physical factors. We have overtraining. That happens from doing too much activity or too much intensity within that activity. You have undertraining, and people don't think of the stress of undertraining. A lot of people say, oh, I sit a lot, so I have these problems. You're actually getting micro traumas through that undertraining, whether it comes from, we're talking about types of undertraining too, or you have an acute injury. And that's where, acute trauma will happen from either, a sprained ankle or, getting, falling off of a bicycle or something like that. Then two, go into our pain stiffness. Well, the physical response to the stress is pain or stiffness, and so this is this chronic debilitating pain of movement. This is the stiffness, the joint pain, this is the aching. And then it also leads to this lack of confidence in being able to perform movement, and that could happen at a minimal level or towards minimal activities, like you can't even pick up your keys up off the ground. Or it could be those maximal loads, like picking up a heavy box out of the garage or something like that. And of course, this leads to lack of movement, and so when you don't have the confidence, you tend to move less, you become sedentary, and then that repeats the cycle, with the compounding problem of underuse and overuse issues, because you have the underuse issue where you're not keeping the body up, and then you have the overuse issue because where before you would have picked up that box out of the garage and you would have been able to do it, and now you're picking up that box out of the garage and now it hurts you, and so now you have an overuse issue compounded on top of it. Hopefully that made sense. So we also create this physio-emotional connection that happens along with this pain cycle. And this is where we have the pain cycle that we have drawn out here to the muscle guarding, spasm and inflammation, restricted movement, muscle weakness, loss of normal function. But then we also get this sort of frustration and this, this anger, this frustration, this helplessness that goes along with it. So if you're experiencing that sort of thing too, then this is definitely a direction to go in reversing that. So this is, this perpetual fight and flight cycle. We're stuck in perpetually being, kind of hyperstimulated through pain. Our central nervous system is in hyperdrive and it exhausts us. So that leads us to depression, anxiety, exhaustion, that sort of thing. So we're looking at the cascading effects on health from the chronic pain. We might also get short tightness of breath, vascular restriction, heart stress, blood pressure, metabolic problems, all that kind of stuff, all stemming from chronic pain. If we have these problems, we don't want to be active. If our body can't move well, we don't want to move. And then that perpetuates the cycle even more, just as we were talking about. If we have a hyperactive central nervous system, we don't have the time or the energy to take care of our bodies, and therefore we lack sleep and restoration. And this leads us to a higher risk of metabolic and cardiovascular diseases, imminent problems for falls later in life. This is a problem for longevity, both the length of life and the feeling of usefulness, contribution, and our purpose in life, and our overall quality in life moving along. So that's why we need to address chronic pain when it starts, or as soon as we can. These are those chronic health conditions. If we look on, this is from the CDC. If we look on this right-hand chart, we see, cardiovascular disease, cancer, all this stuff that comes from, that can be stemmed back to a sedentary lifestyle, at least as a component of all these things. We do not see chronic pain in here, but chronic pain does have a causal effect on all those things. So who am I? Why are you listening to me? What do I do for a living? What is my experience? All that kind of stuff. So my name is Jason Root. I'm a sports physiologist and functional health specialist. I've been working in all aspects of the field of human movement for over 2.5 decades, both with athletes, athletes, spinal cord injury, chronic pain, and physical therapy, chiropractic, all that kind of stuff, working within these avenues as an adjunct, using movement as the adjunct to a lot of those things. I studied, researched, experienced personally, and applied these solutions with clients with this problem since day one of my career and my education. I mean, starting way, way far back, personally with back pain, with clients, with all sorts of, mechanical restrictions and movement problems, all that kind of stuff. And as a student, all through across all domains, being educational, work, and as an athlete myself. My credentials as my formal foundational credentials are, I have a Bachelor of Science in Kinesiology and I have a Master's of Science in Biomedical Diagnostics. Kinesiology has an emphasis on human performance and sports and exercise psychology. And then my Master's of Science has an emphasis on state condition testing and applications towards precision functional health systems. Hopefully all that makes sense. If not, that's all right. You don't have a test at the end or anything like that. It's just to give you an overview of what I do. So other credentials, strength and conditioning specialist, that gives me a really good understanding of mechanics as related to sports, exercise, health, and injury resilience, keeping people, out of the doctor's office and on the field. Spinal cord injury restoration movement specialist. I did that for a while, and so we're building the nervous system, the movement system from the ground up. For the people with spinal cord injury. Chronic pain specialist. I got that from the University of Minnesota, and sports nutrition and blood labs analysis specialist. And those help a lot when we're dealing with inflammation, which is something that we'll talk about a little bit later on. So my own experience, I had chronic back pain for about 20 years. Last 5 years was way better than the first 5 years, but still had it for about 20 years, stemming from when I was about 17 years old. So, definitely went through the same thing you folks are going through. Shoulder pain, had that for about a year, had to work my way out of it, studied the heck out of it. And, now we coach, now shoulder pain is, one of our biggest, client, a lot of our clientele has shoulder pain. Let's just say that. Plantar fasciitis, I worked my way through that. Where we'll have a lot of our clientele come in with plantar fasciitis, compounding with knee pain, back pain, all that kind of stuff. So, all right, enough about me. What are the physical causes and specifics of pain? So we talked about kind of the macro concepts of pain, and what are the physical causes and the specifics that cause the breakdown. Dyskinesis. So one word, dyskinesis. And dyskinesis is where we have, this structurally, what happens between the physical stress and the pain and the stiffness. Well, we have a breakdown in here between the central nervous system and the muscular system. So that's where we get musculoskeletal pain. And the components of that problem in this arrow right here are what we call restrictions and then what we call coordination issues. And so the coordination issues are in posture, range of motion, and stabilization. And the restriction types are, these 5 types right here. Trigger points, short and tight, long and tight, deep restricted, fascial adhesion. You don't have to remember those, but know that you do want to recognize that there are 5 types, because when we start teaching you how to address them, you don't want to be addressing the wrong one in the wrong way. This is way later on down the road, but still. For the coordination aspects, this is the ability of the nervous system to engage the right muscles in the right ratio for the right job. Let's say you're walking down the street. Well, you want your glutes to be acting a certain way. You want your quads to be acting a certain way. You want your hamstrings to be acting a certain way. And we want the nervous system to be recruiting those in the right way to get that job done. All right, and so for instance, let's say we have Eddie right here, and Eddie has some restriction in his IT band or in his vastus lateralis, that's going to cause, certain coordination issues of the hamstring, also deeper restrictions as well, coordination issues in the glutes up here. And so what happens is you get referral pain into this lower back portion, not necessarily in this muscle right here, but in this area. And so that's how dyskinesis works. And so because of the cascading effects of these issues across the body, as you saw, we were just talking about a small area dealing with the hip or the lumbopelvo-hip area, the lumbopelvo-hip complexes, as we call it. When we were talking about one specific area, that can go throughout the entire body. And so we refer to this as being wound up because you have a restriction of movement like you do when you're winding, when you're winding or reining something up. And then that creates another restriction, creating another restriction, and creating another restriction. And we want to unwind those restrictive patterns so that we can restore, a fluid system and restore the coordination that we want to have in order to, just to be able to live with a fluid-centered, strong body. So what's the solution? Well, here's our 5 stages, or here's our 5 things that we want to focus on. Our biggest one that we're going to talk about today is going to be restorative training. But then we want to go through all these others because those are things that we want to pay attention to and strategize as well. All right, so this restorative movement therapy is a method of optimizing the way in which the body moves with relationship to itself and to the external environment. It has a lot to do with posture. It's directed at the components of your problem being posture and gait, being core stabilization and control, and just being the basic coordination patterns that create those, the nervous system to be able to reach the right muscle at the right time. This can be, you can affect these either independently or by a professional administering certain techniques for and with you or on you. We want to reverse the cycle that we were talking about before with the most available resource that you have, which is focused effort. This is the effort to implement simple movement protocols and can break the cycle in the physical domain. So we want to create positive stress instead of the negative stress that was before. That creates a reduction of pain. That creates you wanting to do more activity. And then that creates more positive stress. And so in our care cycle, or our care components maybe, you want to make sure that you do a proper assessment, both of your strength, mobility or motion, your posture, gait, things like that. You want to do this at the beginning of a strategy and at intervals within that strategy. And so you want to follow those. You can do these daily as well as monthly and quarterly. So that's what I mean by at the beginning and at intervals. You want to do activity that addresses posture, mobility, strength, core strength, stabilization strength, and gross movement all at the same time. And we want to do tracking of your activity and your outcomes and have those associated with each other throughout the entire thing. You can do this on a calendar, all sorts of things. Excuse me. So if we look at posture here, just an example is, we can see, let me get my face out of the way if you can see that. So we can see the person over here is nice and straight and everything's stacked up and everything's in line. So this is a low tension state. Over here, this guy's head is forward, everything's not stacked up. The hips are pointed back. And so he is in a high tension state. So he's going to have a lot of pain. Probably going to have back pain, probably going to have shoulder pain, neck pain, pain over here. So he is wound up. As we can see, the rib cage is on top of the diaphragm, so that creates a coordination problem with your nervous system and the diaphragm. The hips tighten in the front, and the lower back, it's tight in the back, and that creates tension and dyskinesis, both in restriction and in those coordination patterns we were talking about. And so then we need to address, on top of posture, we have to address range of motion. A lot of people call it mobility, but really mobility is the entire thing. But range of motion, that's the ability of single joints to move throughout their intended range of motion. So an optimal movement is a state where the body's movement flows without internal restriction. So that's where this range of motion, we can test range of motion, see if there's internal restriction. And it's marked by a feeling of fluidity, centeredness, and strength, and a confidence that you can execute physical tasks. So unwinding the body from tensional states takes continual focus and daily action. This is a little bit like, you're paying attention to your spending, so you avoid the poorhouse. It's like, you got to make sure that you are always aware, although you don't have to be necessarily doing something all the time, but you need to be aware of it so that you can implement the right strategies at the right time. And then you must do this to act against this continual negative training of life. So we're talking about positive training, positive development, positive mobility, positive posture, all that kind of stuff. But we also have something opposite, which is our lives have negative training. Sitting is negative training. Driving is negative training. Stress is negative training. Inactivity is negative. They're all having an impact on the state of your body, on the state of your being, and they're programming it in a certain way, and you need to program it in the opposite direction. So the activities and the skills we're going to learn that you need to learn in order to do this are in 3 categories, and those are for posture and core, or stabilization is a better word for it, but a lot of you know core. So, this is a core exercise. That's a posture and core exercise. You need to learn dynamic and passive stretch and be able to implement dynamic and passive stretch. And then you need to be able to implement release techniques. So we need to address the fascia, which is a part of the muscular system, although not a muscular tissue, a muscular system. Again, you don't have to remember that or anything like that, but it's just an introduction to a concept. And then manual therapy is another good thing that you learn. Again, you can do this on your own, or you could use a partner or a manual therapist to help you out. All right, and then we need to, the second category is repetitive motion, increase repetitive motion. So what are we talking about here? Walking, running, swimming, these things that are repetitive motion. We're not talking about reps, like doing a squat. You do a squat, you do 10 reps. You don't walk and you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whichever, one on the right foot, one on the left foot, one on the right, 2 on the right foot, 2 on the left foot. We don't do that. We walk 3 miles, something of that nature. We walk for 45 minutes. So we want to get that, we want to get our 10,000 steps. We want to get 45 minutes, or this could also be, activities that take that length of time, like gardening or housework, things of that nature. A bonus for breath work if you do that. And then you combine breath work with the repetitive motion activity. All right, the next category that we're going to talk about is reducing inflammation, and that we really just address this through nutrition, low inflammatory nutritional practices. That's the major thing we talk about. Also, reducing environmental causes of inflammation, is another big way to do it. But our major emphasis is just on nutrition. That's enough to tackle for us. The other thing, reducing negative stressors, we talked about that a little bit on, our restorative conditioning end. But if we can reduce, not performing activities that cause negative problems, I guess all problems are negative. Doing those activities that produce negative states in our body, like sitting, like driving, like all those things that we mentioned before, that's as important, if not more important, than the positive activities we're doing. So sitting, screen time, standing in one place, driving. We need to try to eliminate those as much as possible. And then we want to increase recovery techniques. We want to go through our insomnia checklist. We want to have the right amount of light, the right type of light. We want to, have the light at the right times. We can take certain supplements to help this. We can reduce caffeine as stimulants and have those at the right times. We can have consistent bed and waking, meal timing, temperature, exercise. We can work with all of that to make sure that at least we're getting the right sleep and, that we're taking, the right actions towards mental stress, meditation, naps, mental breaks, things of that nature. Physical recovery. By the way, there are specific strategies for all of this type of thing. Physical recovery, I mean, you got sensory deprivation, cold therapy, sauna, red light therapy, hyperbaric chamber. Nutrition also falls into that as well. And then in addition to our 5 categories, you have mindset, you have social aspects, you have environmental aspects, we have reinforcement, reinforcement mechanisms like creams, to reduce inflammation and pain, posture shirts and wearables, support mechanisms, and then sunlight and magnetic fields are, another area that, we can have strategies involved. All right, FAQs. Really, there's only one frequent thing I get all the time is, can I just do yoga and Pilates? Well, the research says, and I'm quoting Stu McGill, who's the North American back expert, well above everybody else. What he says is, yoga and Pilates is about 1/3 good, 1/3 bad, and 1/3 no discernible change. And so your approach and your strategy should be specific and should have a practical nature to it. So, yoga and Pilates is kind of throwing the spaghetti at the wall. I know a lot of people that do get good, results from it, though they would fall into that 3rd good category. But as Stu McGill says, most of our hip replacements are in 2 categories: the people that do yoga and Pilates, right here it is, and the people that do a lot of deadlifting and heavy strength training. So I love strength training. I think it's great, but we do have to be aware that those activities, if done without intention, can have a negative effect on our physiology and our health in the long term. Other factors, I'll skip through this. Let's see. Actually, if you like our help, we have a local solution. You can make an appointment below in LA or Orange County and use that button in order to do so. We also have an online solution. You can go ahead and contact me for that. And I'd love to help you out. And, just contact me for anything you need. The number and the email are down below. Whatever you need, let me know. I'm glad to help. So thank you very much for sitting through my presentation here. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got some valuable information. I look forward to talking to you soon.